And just remember, these are going to be trying to do these on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. on Facebook Live. And we appreciate you being with us. And as I said, John Ross here. And I have a special guest today, Vernon LaVia. Vernon's going to be with us. And we're happy to have Vernon with us. He's, well, I've known Vernon for about 20 years as a brother in Christ, and he is someone who strives to follow the teachings of Jesus Christ, and often, well, he fails like I do too. We all fail. And but he strives nevertheless, and we're striving today. We fail at times. We're gonna show something today. It's gonna be interesting. He's an economist, and he came out of Duke University. There's a lot of basketball out of Duke. But he's an economist, so that's a little different. He's opened some 20 different corporations or so, and he's truly an entrepreneur and a capitalist. Okay. And he's been a bird watcher. This is a unique part about Vernon, bird watching, and a nature enthusiast for 50 years. And he got that bug when he was a young little punk at 6 or 7. I don't know. How about 8? But it was 6 or 7. That's what he told me, at 6 or 7. And since then, he's traveled to 6 continents. That means he missed one, I guess. And 55 countries and all 50 states. This brother's been around. And then he was asked to do a TED Talk live. Those are tech talks. And I think that was out of Naperville you did that one, Vernon. But I know you did TED Talks, and those are very important things. From that, he got a book deal and from a small publisher, and who saw the talk. So we have Vernon with us, and I'm going to put up the book cover here. It's the second here. We're going to show the book, and I'm going to be squunched in between here. And this is the book we're talking about, Make Earth Great Again. And we're happy to have Vernon with us, and the subtitle of the book is Earth Avoidance and Our Disappearing Connection with Nature. So that's an interesting subtitle, and I'm happy to have Vernon. So Vernon, why don't you just go ahead and give us your summary of this book that you've put together and the meaning of your title.
Well, thank you, John, for that introduction. Wow. And thank you for what you're doing. You're connecting people during this COVID-19 pandemic, and connecting people is so important. You're doing it through social media. We old dogs really can learn new tricks. I like to call it media socialization. I just think social media is overused. Anyway, the book, Make Earth Great Again, came out of my travels around the world, as you pointed out. So here's the premise of the book, John. After tens of thousands of years of humans living outdoors in small groups, 3 main things have taken place with humanity. And by the way, nobody is to blame. I don't point fingers at anyone in my book. A lot of people have emailed me from around the world even saying, you should blame capitalists. No, they're not to blame. We are all complicit in having way more stuff than we need to survive. We are all part of this, and we're all part of the solution. So 3 main things have happened in just a short period of time. First, humanity has raced indoors and into crowded cities. In just the past 100 to 150 years, we now in America have 81% of Americans living on only 3% of the geographic land. After tens of thousands of years of living in rural existence, we are now what I like to call indoor citified creatures. All right, that's number 1. Second, at the same time, gross consumerism has practically become a religion, where people spend much, much more time researching what unnecessary item they are going to buy next than the time they spend reading the words of the Bible or the Quran or the Torah or the teachings of Buddha or even the Chinese Book of Wisdom. Any of the great writings, people spend more time shopping. Just a fact. And third, the world's population has grown from 1.7 billion in 1920 to 7.8 billion today. 6 billion more human beings in just 100 years. Let me put it in a consumeristic way. That would be like 3 million people showing up at the gates of Disney World on the same day. Disney World has a maximum capacity of 50,000 people. If they let 3 million people in, it would collapse the system. Food and drink would run out. They'd have to lock the gates and stop entry. And some people would yell and scream and even break down the gates, maybe just to use the bathroom. So my book tries to make sense of the reasons that most people are blind to the pressures we are putting on the earth. It is simply put, 6 billion new human beings in just the past 100 years have made Mother Earth unable to replenish her resources at a fast enough pace. And it is very difficult for most folks to grasp that Earth's resources are not infinite. When she runs out of something, we tend to replace it with something else. For instance, when we run out of a fish, we gross consumers, our gross consumer machine, if you will, we simply move into a new fish. Like, for example, 50 years ago, there were 40 million bluefin tuna in the oceans, estimated. Today, that number is estimated below 500,000. In fact, to show the flaw of capitalism, I'm a capitalist. I am not blaming capitalism. It has major flaws. Now there's tuna that are so rare and on the verge of extinction. There's a reality TV show called Wicked Tuna. And in Japan, one large fish sold last year for $1.8 million. One fish. The flaw of capitalism is, as it relates to natural resources, that as the extinction is accelerated, the value increases. And this is simply irrefutable. This is not a political issue. This is not an opinion. It is clearly what we've done with natural resources like fish, minerals, mahogany trees, even diamonds. Even diamonds are running out. It's basic man-made economics. And by the way, all of economics are man-made. It isn't truth. It's not in any of the great books that I just mentioned earlier. And yet our elected leaders and most of the people who vote for them, we seem to think the almighty dollar and consumerism is the foundation of humanity and the foundation of truth. That's just a 100-year-old little itty bitty thing in the speck of, in the speck of all time, in the duration of all time. So in the Sermon on the Mount, alas, something I've read just about every day for 12 years, John, Jesus ends his radical lecture by warning us about building our house on sand and not on rock. The sand will always shift and collapse any structure built on it. In the same way, gross consumerism is building on sand. It will absolutely, positively collapse someday. And we will have nothing left but the earth, as scarred and resource bare as it may be by our choice, we'll be left with the earth. So, as the subtitle implies of my book, most folks even go out of their way to avoid the earth. They don't touch the earth, many times days at a time. They spend all their time on a man-made floor indoors or on blacktop streets, on cement sidewalks. Heck, even when they go walk in a park, they usually remain on man-made crushed stones or blacktop that was unnaturally manipulated and placed there in the woods by humans. People go days without actually touching the earth. So it's only logical that as a species, we are losing the ability to understand or interpret and connect with Earth. That's the premise of my book, John.
Well, thank you for that little overview. And Vernon, you said a lot of things. I wonder, I got at least one question. I got a question. How did you arrive at all this theory of the world? It's almost like a new perspective. Maybe you the first human to ever have this perspective? I don't know, but will I ask? What do you think on that, Vernon?
Well, John, I don't think there are many truly original ideas on the planet. All right, that's first. So, second, any thoughts I have in my brain really came from thousands of other people. I am grateful for all the people who have shared their wisdom and ideas with me, whether it was my parents, my school teachers, the authors of books, the thousands of people I've met with in business or even hiked with in nature. You see, in college, I wrote a treatise, and I called it the jigsaw puzzle analogy of human understanding. I like to think of our brains as filled with billions of jigsaw puzzle pieces, and each of our brains is a unique fingerprint because we take in these pieces every minute of every day of our lives through our eyes, through our ears, through our nose, through our hands, through our feet, even when the wind blows on our body and our hair at the beach. Our brain records each jigsaw puzzle piece, each sensation, if you will, of new knowledge or new discovery. And we have the choice. We have the free will to sit back, relax, and ponder how will we choose to connect some of these pieces. And that's really all my perspective is. All of our lives, we are really hundreds or even thousands of individual small jigsaw puzzles that are in our mind. For instance, I've been selling insurance for 35 years. So maybe that puzzle is a 10,000 piece jigsaw puzzle in my mind. I've been birding for 50 years. So maybe that's a 15,000 piece jigsaw puzzle that I've connected in my mind. I've been deploying AED defibrillators for 19 years. Maybe that's a 5,000 piece jigsaw puzzle. I think you get what I mean. We all go through life with all of these jigsaw puzzles. But I've only just recently started to identify plants and trees. So I know it's more like a third grade little wooden jigsaw puzzle, you know, those easy ones made out of wood with maybe only 12 or 20 pieces. And a humble person will know inherently that there is always someone with a larger jigsaw puzzle than mine, whether it's birds or insurance or flowers. So also keep in mind, John, this perspective that you say, you know, that I have on this. My wife was an elected member of the House of Representatives in Illinois for over 16 years. And so, you know, I got to see policy in action. This is not about politics. We're talking about policy here, and policy in action in various committees of the House of Representatives. It became clear that our elected leaders, they didn't really speak or understand the language of nature. In other words, and I'm not being judgmental, I'm not finger pointing here, but in other words, they simply can't grasp the things they were hearing in testimony or in committee from scientists, from the Sierra Club, or any number of nature-related organizations. They would testify in committee on behalf of certain legislation, and it dawned on me that these elected leaders were indoor city people. They had spent their entire lives in cities. And by the way, a very long study shows we spend 93% of our time indoors in the United States and in Great Britain. So how could these elected leaders possibly grasp the concerns of naturalists and ecologists, people who have lived a lot more outside and can interpret the language of nature? And how can they hear the cry of Mother Nature? Sadly, the political world, the word environmentalist is often viewed as a dirty word. In fact, a poll shows 33% of our American society and our elected leaders think it's a hoax and it's a dirty word. Really? Water and air are a hoax to 33% of our electorate. These are not dumb people or dumb elected leaders. I want to be clear. They are very, very smart, many of them. In fact, but they simply are ignorant about the language and interpretation of the signs of nature. That's all around us. Let me be clear. I'm ignorant of many things, but that doesn't stop my mind from forming an opinion about it, right? Right, John? For example, I'm not a lawyer and I have no training as a lawyer, but God knows I have an opinion just about every time I hear of a legal case being decided by the Supreme Court in a way that I didn't like. gosh darn it, that little voice in my mind says, that's not right. And then instead of voicing my opinion and trying to tell my US congressman, who I know pretty well, that it's wrong, instead I call a few of my lawyer friends, usually at least 3, including my brother. And I ask them, and I make a fool of myself with my ignorant opinion. And I listen to their perspective because they have larger jigsaw puzzles that they've connected in their minds with thousands and thousands of pieces of the law versus my little 3rd grade legal puzzle that I have in my mind. So my book, John, is a unique perspective, but it's a listening to the opinions of many, many folks. In fact, I drove a pickup truck from California to Connecticut in October of 2018 to really get nitty gritty in writing this book, a 34-day journey. And I met with professors, scientists, MD doctors, ornithologists, elected officials, even restaurant owners, and the people who were eating in their restaurants. Just ask folks about their perspective on the earth. For example, in a diner in eastern Colorado, one of the owners of the restaurant let me stand up and talk to all 25 of his diners who were eating there. And voila, one guy said, damn lefties, I didn't miss honeybees yesterday and I didn't miss them today and I won't miss what's the big frickin' deal about them tomorrow? All I asked people was, I'm curious about how folks think about the earth. I didn't say anything else. I just said, hey, I'm curious about how people think about the earth. And that guy stands up and says that. Then another person raised her hand and said, oh, but I do worry about what we are doing to the oceans and with all of our trash killing fish. And then another guy said, yup, I just got back from an annual fishing trip in the Gulf of Mexico. And for the first time in 20 years, we didn't catch a darn thing worth telling about. He was fishing for 3 or 4 days and they didn't catch anything. And then I asked them, why do you think most folks take their vacations somewhere near an ocean or a lake or a river or a park or a forest, even just to watch the leaves change color in the fall? And the people there had all kinds of things to say about that, but they all agreed with what one woman said. She says, well, we all come from dirt and we will return to dirt. I guess we are really all part of the earth all of the time. And then she said, but we have fooled ourselves into thinking we are above the dirt and more important than the bugs and the bats and the bees. Wham, pow. Just like the old TV show Batman, that hit me hard. I practically yelled out like Robin in Batman in one episode. He says, holy trigonometric functions, Batman. That was a wow moment for me when that lady said that. So John, yes, it may be a unique perspective, as you put it, but I'm sure many other people have arrived at a very similar jigsaw puzzle in their minds. Does that make sense? John, if you can hear me, your audio is off right now.
That is correct. I had my audio off. Sorry about that. I did a little mute there. Oh boy, you like to have fun, and I love the way you talk in the pictures. I guess it's because you're talking in jigsaw puzzle pictures. So, Vernon, that was powerful stuff, and I know I've heard you talk on this before. You really have a deep belief on these things. You clearly have more observations than most people, a lot of people give it. Your footsteps on this planet, right? And in a way, you're just been blessed with an opportunity to absorb more pieces of information than a lot of people out there. Most people who stay in stationary lives, all that travel and all those places you've been. So, Vernon, I'm interested in your book. I know it's a nice read. I read that a few months ago now, and it's about 3-4 hours to finish the book. And why don't you just give us a little summary of the book and maybe a few excerpts, whatever. And yeah, just tell us about the book. And I see you got your cap on there, and that's the official cap.
My official.
So go right ahead, Vernon, and just give it to us.
Well, John, I do appreciate this opportunity. Obviously, as a starving artist, it's hard to sell books. Wait, there it is. And I also have caps, and people can just email me, and I can take credit cards over the phone and stuff like that, or we can figure out how to do it. But I know you have a banner you're going to pop up about the book.
Yeah, we're going to pop up some more stuff here, Vernon. Yep.
But I'd love during this time to be able to just personally ship out books and hats to folks. So Make Earth Great Again, first is dedicated to my father. My father really, my mother too, really helped us, my brother, my sister, and I get big wings. And we really, all three of us, chose to fly far. And so thank you to my father. He died in my arms while we were bird watching on the island of Attu, the very last of the Aleutian Islands. And so let me just go through the chapters, just a few, maybe 30 seconds on each chapter. So chapter 1, called The Canaries Are Dying, and the quote at the head of the chapter from Teddy Roosevelt: "The forest and the water problems are perhaps the most vital internal problems facing the United States." In 1913, he opened his address to the nation when he spoke to the Joint Congress in his annual address to the nation. Those were his opening words. Today, when you hear presidents talk, I mean, we don't get anything in the last 2 or 3 years about our water and our air. Literally not one word. The single most important thing to humanity, and we don't get a word. So that's sort of a stark contrast between, a solid, Teddy Roosevelt Republican, and how he realized in my first chapter, I talk about we cannot have economy, advancement, invention without water, air, and forests, natural resources, in other words. None of that other stuff works without it. And we have fooled ourselves because of plastic and other things into thinking we can. Chapter 2, I talk about just a little introduction and bio about how I first became interested in loving nature. That's chapter 2. A little bird called a house wren landed right in front of my nose a few inches away when I was 6 years old and did its amazing song. By the way, yesterday, April 28th, 2020, the house wren arrived in my backyard, almost like it gets all the way back here to my little backyard. 20 straight years I've had a house wren nesting in my backyard. So this one was probably born there maybe 5 years ago. Anyway, so I talk about the house wren and how it amazed me, this little half of an ounce bird doing this magnificent call. And then I tell some stories of my travels. In chapter 3, it explains how I was invited to do a TEDx talk. In TEDx, it was filmed in Naperville, in front of about 1,000 people. And boy, those folks at TED are just brilliant. They really are. They really coached me from doing a talk.
Vernon, are you there?
Very appreciative of what he was able to teach me. He's a ghostwriter who had written 80 books, but his name had never been on a cover. After he was coaching me, I decided I don't want this book ghostwritten. I really want to coach. And then I said to him, listen, why don't you be on with me on the cover, his first cover of any book. Then a few months later, he actually wrote his own book. So chapter 4 is age report that took 3 years to make. It came out in 2019. It was across over 50 countries. Far less talked about, but just as dangerous, is the rapid decline of the natural world. The felling of forests, the overexploitation of seas and soils, and the pollution of air and water are together driving the living world to the brink. Tens of thousands of species are at high risk of extinction as countries are using nature at a rate that far exceeds its ability to renew itself. And nature's ability to contribute food and fresh water to a growing human population is being compromised in every region on Earth. That is not politics. That's not our petty US politics. That's a 50-country report that took 3 years and over 600 different scientists contributing to that report. Not politics, folks. None of our pettiness involved in that report. And so extinction is forever. People get very confused because, oh, they say on some news channels, things have always gone extinct. Yes, there is natural extinction. And at any given time, about 1,000 species are on the verge of natural extinction. We're talking 10,000 species on the verge of extinction here, very rapidly, very different. So just because you have Google, it doesn't make you a scientist. And we should say that to a lot of these news channels that are really just reality TV shows, not news. Chapter 5, the language of nature is dying. This is where I get into the premise I've already shared. If we live indoors and we barely spend any time outdoors, how can anyone, most people, claim to understand the language of nature? They will always choose economy and dollar over nature simply out of ignorance of the language of nature. Hey, they don't speak Latin either. And if some 80-year-old Catholic priest came and started talking Latin in testimony of Congress, you would see all the congressmen turning around, talking to their aides about different bills and different things. That's exactly what happens when the Sierra Club is testifying in Congress. All the congressmen turn around. They can't understand what they're saying. They don't know how the bees are connected to the polar bears, which are connected to the blue crab of the Chesapeake Bay, which are connected to the dying off of salmon in the states of Washington and Oregon. People just can't connect that. They go on vacation maybe 2 weeks a year, go skiing and go, I know nature. I go hiking and I go times a year into nature. I make an effort to walk off the trail and not on the path. So chapter 5, the language of nature is dying. Chapter 6 is probably my favorite chapter. Chapter 6 is called Connecting the Dots. Maybe I should have called it Connecting the Jigsaw Puzzle Pieces. But most people who can't speak the language of nature can't connect the dots I talked about. So real quickly, I'll summarize in chapter 6. This is just irrefutable stuff that I share about, number 1, beavers, bison, passenger pigeons, Rocky Mountain grasshoppers. That's number 4. Human beings in the 1870s in America, we caused the extinction of 12 trillion, not billion, but trillion Rocky Mountain grasshoppers was the estimate. So just think of that, what's possible for human beings if we did that in the 1870s before we had all this great technology. Number 5, Eskimo curlews, forests, polar bears, bats, birds, blue crab, ocean garbage, clean water, ozone layer hole, bramble kai melamies. That's number 14 in this chapter. The bramble kai melamies is the first mammal in Australia, not American politics. In Australia, it was declared the first mammal extinct due to climate change. Mammals of Great Britain, they project 10 mammals will be extinct within the next 15 years in Great Britain. Bees, salmon, all mammals larger than cows are predicted to go extinct on the planet in the next 50 years. Shark extinction. We humans have put about a dozen species of shark extinct in the last 50 years. These were things that were here with the dinosaurs, 450 million years old. And in 50 little years, we've caused 14 species to go extinct. Rainforests, the unnatural extinction of thousands of species projected. Sea levels rising, the next ice age. Krill, anchovy, and then number 26 of the connecting of dots is phytoplankton. Most people don't realize, they learned it, they just forgot, that phytoplankton gives us half of our oxygen. Phytoplankton are dying off in the oceans. where we get half of our oxygen. We're not planting enough trees to keep up with oxygen production on land. So we better get serious about phytoplankton. And my book talks about a handful of billionaires who are starting to deal with the phytoplankton crash. Chapter 7 is all about what water is. Listen, water made America great. If you really want to get down to it, water made America great. Until we could bureaucratize and organize water, we were just killing ourselves off, community after community, from the 1700s all the way to the early, mid 1800s. If we didn't get water right, we were literally bathing and cooking food in our own feces as our population grew. And I tell the story about Chicago and how we were killing many of the first pioneers as our feces were floating down towards where they were trying to set up communities. So that's chapter 7 about water. Chapter 8 is also one of my favorite chapters. It's the new God of consumerism. And by the way, I've worked on a second book, an outline to a second book, and the next book is called The God of Consumerism. Well, in chapter 8, I discovered how many more people in America go shopping on the holy days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all the three great religions, right? 4 times more people go shopping on those days than all the people who attend a church or a synagogue or a mosque. And so the God of consumerism it has a piece in there about how marketers are the new high priests of our society. We take things on the surface and they are not true. If you drive into a gas station that has a banner that says #1 gas detergent, it is not true in the sense of what you think it to mean. Most of us would think, wow, it means my engine is going to get cleaner. No. I did the research. I talked to senior vice presidents at a large oil company. All it means is they are #1 in sales in that category. That is the lie of the God of capitalism. It's a false God. Whether a toothbrush advertises it will get to hard to reach places better, that is a false God. It is not true. The toothbrush also turns out to be only #1 in its sales category. Has nothing to do with the quality of cleaning your child's tooth. This is the false God of consumerism that we in America and many places around the world have completely given into and bowed down to. Not everyone, but the vast majority. Chapter 9 deals with citification and the movement of humans from nature into cities. I've already talked about that. Some people think it's great. Cities are our great hope. Well, they aren't our great hope if we don't build cities in the right way. Unfortunately, cities are making people obese and lazy and not able to survive. Cities are also causing people to die in New York at a much faster rate. They have the highest per million death rate of COVID-19. So as we cram humans together, if we don't put something in there that stops us from just consuming everything we can grab, whether it's 50 pairs of sneakers in our closet or 10 meals of a fast food restaurant every single week, whatever it is that's at our fingertips to consume is not a good thing for humanity. It's only a good thing for the false God of consumerism. Chapter 10 is called Nature RX. All around the world, MD doctors have been prescribing nature instead of prescription drugs. A very few people in the United States are already doing that for sleeplessness, anxiety, some things like that, PTSD. But here in the United States, we have doctors and healthcare systems that actually make money off of the kickbacks of prescribing more drugs. Therefore, Nature RX around the world, we see countries where you don't get a prescription for type 2 diabetes until you can prove that you, for 3 months, have gone out and walked in the woods and have altered the way you eat. Then you can get a prescription, but not until then. And so we have people who just start popping prescriptions while they eat 4 pizzas a week, 7 donuts a week, and drink 10 beers. And that's type 2 diabetes that they're causing themselves. The last chapter, then, chapter 11, does talk about action. I give 6 solutions that we can do. And believe it or not, one of them is what I think it was Ralph Nader who wrote a book about 20 years ago that says only the uber millionaires can save us now. I forget the exact title, but basically he's right. The billionaires can save us. Those billionaires who are trying to save phytoplankton, if they put their resources together, can regrow blooms of phytoplankton and keep our garbage from getting into the blooms of phytoplankton so that photosynthesis can keep giving humans oxygen. Otherwise, we'll run out of oxygen. That's not a theory. That is just a pure fact that is not an endless, infinite resource. Nothing Mother Nature gives us is infinite and endless if we keep using it up faster than she can produce it. So John, that's a summary of the 11 chapters of my book. You're muted still, John. Hey, John, I think you are muted.
I'm mute, sorry.
Yep.
There you are. We're back now. Vernon, I think you got another calling as preacher or something. You just expound and you have that deep in your soul there. We've had a little extended time here. It's Vernon's been with us we're at about 35 minutes here on this time together.
Well, let's bring it to an end, John. Let's bring it to an end.
Yeah, I wanted to share something here briefly. Yes, we're going to talk about one couple of things here. Vernon's done some book signings in the past, and he's just loves to show off his book, as you can see here, and what he's talking about. And as I put up before, we're going to have Vernon back talking about COVID-19 and the West Nile virus that he experienced, and that's a deep story right there. And we're going to do that sometime soon again, I hope. So Vernon's had some book signings, and Vernon, we have an opportunity to buy a book and get this hat that you have there. I have one in just off the stage here. And you got the hat and book, $15 each, and 2 for $25 plus shipping. And you want to communicate with Vernon, you can do that. I think we got the right one coming up.
Yeah, just email me. It'll be best, and we can figure out.
Yeah, we're going to get that up here. 1 second here.
And John, while you're doing that,
it is. There's Vernon's email. Yes.
So John, let me just say that during COVID-19, just get out into nature. I am so hopeful that governors all over this country are telling people, get out in nature. Last crises our country had, the presidents and governors said, keep shopping and go to movies. Well, now they are saying, take walks in nature. This is the first time in my life that our elected leaders are united in saying, go out, take a walk, be outside, be in nature. I hope that this stays with us. I really do. And most importantly, get children to be out there in nature, not on blacktop paths, but out in the woods. Put on old shoes, get muddy, who cares? And go into nature. You will feel better. If you have any stress over COVID-19, you will gradually see it just start slipping away. I've been taking people out. We've been social distancing, but I've taken over 25 people out who have never walked off a trail in nature before. 25 off-trail virgins. And let me tell you, they start breathing differently. They say things like, wow, I never noticed all this was here before. It's always been here. We are one. We are dirt. And that's what we are, man. So that's what I'll leave you with, John. Thank you for today and promoting my book. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming. And does mowing the lawn
count? Work out a deal
on the grass? Does that count? Mowing the grass. That's what we've been doing here. And I have done some walking, and I've seen one of Vernon's favorite birds, the turkey vulture, out there. You don't want to see a turkey vulture. I saw one down in my pavement on my street one day. That was about the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. But turkey vulture. But Vernon, you've seen a lot of. I want to ask, how many birds have you seen now? And was it 3,000? You said
about 3,600 birds, and I can do some bird calls. Let me finish with a bird call.
Okay, give us. I'll try to guess what it is. I probably won't get it though.
Well, it's something we're all hearing right now around Aurora, Illinois. It is a house finch. So there's a house finch. Go out, go into nature. Thank you, John.
Well, that reminds me, Vernon, I have to put up my bird feeder and put the feed in there to get those house finches to come and love that food that I give them. Well, I do have some food for them, but they don't like that thistle. But I got other feeder. I got to get my cardinals and all the rest. But you've been so beautiful with birds and known you for so long. So thank you for coming today. And we're going to wrap this little guy up here. And we got a good talk here. We had a good time here. And we hope the audio and the other things are coming through. And we're just doing our best here to get this venture off the ground. And I thank Vernon so much for being our first quest. We didn't change that. Sorry about that, everybody. But he's our first guest today.
It was supposed to be Quest.
Yeah, it was, because he's the first one, and I strong-armed him, really. But it's a pleasure to have Vernon with us, and we love this. And Friday we're going to have another report, and we got mystery guests right now. We'll do that. We're going to have a daily report on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and commentaries on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So I thank Vernon for coming, and
my pleasure. Thank you.
Be sure to watch at 5 p.m. on these days. And we just thank you very much again, Vernon, and God bless all you out there. And thank you for listening to our first daily report with Vernon LaVia. Thank you much. God bless. Bye-bye.